Been awkward.
Hello. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Great. Thank you guys for joining us today. We are going to talk about change data capture, a very exciting new feature that we are building at Salesforce. My name is Jay Hurst, product manager at Salesforce. For those of you that I have not met, for those of you that have been following me for the rest of my other sessions, hopefully this is a nice ending to the 3 or 4 that I've done. Like always, we will start with the forward-looking statements slide. I'm sure you guys are really sick of it, but not as sick of it as I am. So, Salesforce is a publicly traded company. As such, we are required to define things as generally available or forward-looking technology. Some of the things we are talking about today, in fact, all of the things we are talking about today is not GA yet. It is forward-looking. So if you are making any purchasing decisions, please base those on things that are generally available and not what we're going to talk about today. Hopefully in a couple releases, I will not be saying that about the change data capture feature. But for the agenda, we're going to go through it fairly quickly. Give you a little bit of what change data capture is, how customers are actually trying to solve change data capture today on Salesforce, what the feature that we're building is, and how that will help you. I have a quick demo we'll show, and then we'll introduce Jitterbit and Keysight on their journeys with change data capture. Talk a little bit about our roadmap, and then we'll try and leave a few minutes for Q&A at the end. Good? Perfect. All right, so what is change data capture? Here's a long list of things that it is based on an article on some Wikipedia page, but essentially change data capture is a design pattern that allows you to detect change in one system and pass that change down to another system. Really, this is used for, in a lot of cases, replication of databases. So when you have 2 different data sets, you update a record in set A, you want it to reflect in set B. So in Salesforce, this means that we want to be able to capture when you create a record, when you update a record, when you delete a record, and actually when you undelete a record as well. So if you can get one of those 4 pieces of information, you can begin to keep your systems in sync with the Salesforce record set. What does this mean even easier? Now with pictures. On the left, we have the Salesforce database. On the right, we have your external database. You may have an account record that you want to create, so you push that into Salesforce. We store it. Now, with a change data capture event, what that will mean is we'll actually submit a change event out to a listener. That listener can then process that same change onto your system. So now we see that the Salesforce database and your external database both have that same Acme record. Then if we ever do an update, let's say we are updating the name to Acme2, we would pass that update to Salesforce. That change would pass into your external database, and hence you can keep everything up to date. Very simple, very easy process, at least conceptually. Now, I say conceptually because there is a lot of details that can go into change data capture. There's a lot of difficulty at times keeping things up to date. So, what are the options that we have today with Salesforce? The first is Sauckel. For those of you who are not aware, Sauckel is the Salesforce query language. And what you would do to keep things in sync with Sauckel is you would have to regularly query Salesforce and ask, what data has changed in my system? As one of our great engineers, Larry, said this morning, that will bring you into the sysmod stamp hell where you're trying to detect when was something last updated on one system and pushing that down. You can definitely do change data capture this way, although it doesn't really give you a real-time or even an extremely easy way to do this because you're always asking for something that happened in the past. Specifically, even if you need to track distinct changes, that becomes even more difficult because if I make a request to get data every 5 minutes, but I change the data 10 times within that 5 minutes, I'll only get the last state of it. So I can't track every distinct change unless I'm querying all the time. Second way you can replicate data is with our Replication API. Most people don't think of it as the Replication API, that is the actual name, but this is a series of calls through get updated and get deleted. Get updated is a call where you provide a beginning time and an end time, and we will send you back every record ID that changed within that time window. You then make a call back using a retrieve call to actually get all of the data about those specific IDs. This is just another form of Sauckel querying. The difference is we handle the time matching for you on our side, but it doesn't really solve any of those other issues around discrete changes, how do you track changes, et cetera. Third, we have the Salesforce Streaming API. So this is where we start moving from a pull-based technology where you're constantly asking for changes to a push-based technology where Salesforce can try and push those changes out to your system. What you do is you define a Sauckel query. You say, anytime a record matches this query, send me the specific fields about that data. So maybe my query is select ID, name, phone number from account, where account name equals Acme. Then anytime a record equals Acme, it will send me those three fields, ID, name, and phone. Now, the drawback here is that the Sauckel query you can write is limited. We can only do a 1,300 character query, which works for a lot of cases, but it doesn't really help you if you have 80, 90, 100 fields, or even more. Also, not all S objects are supported, so it's only supported across 7 entities, which are kind of our traditional Salesforce entities and custom objects. And finally, we can't guarantee order with the Streaming API based on some of how our Apex transactions are handled. So you may get slightly out of order updates, which may not matter to you depending on what your use case you're trying to solve, but it's something to keep in mind. And the final way you can actually start to do change data capture is with the Salesforce Platform Events API. So platform events are a new feature that we came out with in the summer release. This allows you to define an event shape, and then through Apex or through Process Builder, you can actually build an event at time of change. Now, this allows you to actually do any capture that you want. You can actually capture all of the fidelity changes you want, but the drawback is you have to manage all of that. So it's up to you to build the logic in Apex or the logic in Process Builder to look at the record before and after the change, determine what changed, and emit that. The cons here are that, like I said, you own all of that logic. There's a missing C somewhere on the slide. I don't know if you guys can find it. Not all operations in the system can have triggers. Some things we just can't put a trigger on, so you cannot capture everything. And depending on your change rates, the limits of platform events may be a little too low for what you're trying to do. So it could be too expensive to maintain, essentially. So that's why we have actually started building a team, or we have a team that's actually started building the change data capture feature. We want to be able to provide this to you out of the box without you having to build all of this and worry about all of the mechanisms behind the scenes. So the idea is that we want to capture everything that happens in Salesforce across all entities. So we want to be able to detect when your account records change, when your custom objects change, when your tasks and events change, et cetera. We guarantee true ordering here, including transactional ordering. So this way you can actually begin to determine what was the sequence of events that happened on Salesforce so you can replay those down into your tables, which can be very valuable. Like I said, all objects will eventually be supported. And we also provide a lot of information that you couldn't get before. This is information that is inherent to our underlying Oracle system that you just couldn't pull, such as the transaction ID, the SCN ordering number, the execution order, things like that. So what does a change data capture event look like? So for those of you that have started playing with platform events, or if you've used a streaming API before, you'll notice that this is a fairly standard payload of what an event looks like at Salesforce. But there are some distinct differences. The first thing we see up here is the channel that we're subscribed to. So for this specific event, we're subscribed to /data/change events. Now, change events is a physical channel that will contain every event type on it. If you make an account change, it'll be on the change events channel. If you make a lead change, it'll be there. A custom object change, it'll be there. But we also have the ability to subscribe to specific channel names, such as account change event. If you subscribe to account change event instead of change events, then you'd only receive account updates and changes. Second thing we see here is the schema ID. And this is where event decoupling starts to become very interesting and something that was difficult to do before. What the schema represents is the shape of the event that you're receiving. You can take this ID, you can actually go to this REST endpoint, and you can get back all of the metadata on the shape of that event. This allows you to actually start to look at, can I as a reader and a subscriber actually process this event? Based on this known schema set, I know what fields to expect. And if I see a different schema, then that's probably an event I might not be able to process, so I'll have to do some downstream work. This type of schema versioning allows you to begin to decouple your producers and consumers so that they can be changed independently of each other. Next is the replay ID. So this is how we guarantee durability on our event streams. When you actually subscribe to a channel, you provide the channel name and also a replay ID. The replay ID is a distinct value that's associated with each event, and with that ID, we're able to replay across that time window. So for instance, if you have 1,000 events in the system in that time window, maybe the first event is 100, and the last event is 1099, whatever 100 plus 1,000 is. And if you approach and said, I want to subscribe at 1,000, what we'll then do is we'll send you every event that happened after that replay ID. So this way, if your client goes down, as long as you retain that event ID state, you can always resubscribe and get the information up to the tip of the queue again. Now, it's important to note how long we retain that window. Right now, we're retaining for 24 hours. So if your client happens to go down for more than a day, you would have to have another way to reconcile your change sets. Next, we have the change event header. And this is a collection of a lot of information that you can begin to build logic against. Things that will tell you what was happening, what records was it happening against, who made the change, things like that. So if we go through this, we'll see that this change was on the account entity, and it was for that specific object ID. We see the change type is create, so we know it was a new creation of an account. The change origin was Salesforce.core, so this is something that came from the Salesforce application. We see that transaction key, so we know the transaction that this was bound in, and the sequence number. So if you had a series of Apex executions that did 10 things, you would have the same transaction ID possibly with 10 different sequences. So then on your side, you could actually replay those in order against your database. We see that the transaction is ended here. If it was said false, that would mean there were other sequences in that transaction. And we have a list of nulled fields, so fields that changed. This is actually changing slightly as we're developing the product. So this API is not set in stone yet, so keep that in mind. The documentation will have the latest as we change it. And finally, you have a list of all of the fields that changed. In this case, I updated the billing address, so we see a complex entity nested of the billing address with the street, city, state, postal code, and country. There's a lot more changes that happened. This is the rest of that event, so we can see that I set a division. Here was the name of that account, the phone number, the website, et cetera. So the idea is when we send you an event, it's going to tell you everything that changed, what the operation was, who ran it, when it happened, what order in the transaction it was, et cetera. So you'll be able to get a very fine-grained level of detail around what change should you be applying into your data set. Anybody asleep yet? This is thrilling. Okay, so I have a very simple demo before we get to our Jitterbit and Keysight. The demo is fairly straightforward, but I want to actually show that this system works. It's in place and it actually runs. So what I have is a Heroku application, simply subscribes to events. It's listening on the /change events channel. When it receives an event, it's going to print it out on the screen. Pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and refresh this just to make sure the subscription is live. Should be subscribed. Now in my organization, we'll go ahead and let's say we create a new account. This is going to be a hot account of Dreamforce 2017. Give it a phone number. Provide a website. And maybe fill out a couple more fields. Say the revenue is there, and we have 28,000. So we'll go ahead and save this, which just creates the record. And we see it's already populated in that other system, or the Heroku app, which is listening. So we can see that in this case, some slight changes to that API, like I said, but we do see the schema number. We see the account was the entity name. Here's that record that was created. We know it's a create call, transaction ID, et cetera, along with all of the fields that were set. Now, in here, we'll see that there were more fields delivered than what I actually said. I think I only created 5 or 6 fields. But that's what we expect, because we're going to default a lot of fields in the system when you create it, such as the owner ID, the created by ID, created date, et cetera. So on the create call, we're going to deliver you everything that happened during that create. If instead we update that record, let's go ahead and edit it and change one field. We'll add a fax number. Whoop. I have multiple subscriptions going on there, but what we can see here is that in that set of fields that changed, we only see 2 things that changed: the fax number and the last modified date. Everything else remained the same, so we're not going to deliver you them as part of the change event. So something to keep in mind as you're developing, you're going to receive the changes. You're not going to receive the whole entire record. And that's really so that we can efficiently deliver these events. You can picture if you had a whole lot of long text area fields and your entire account record was 5 megabytes of data. If we had to send you 5 megabytes of data every time something changed, it's going to be a little bit of a bandwidth hog, and we wouldn't want to do that. So, very simple demo. Hopefully that explains it. And we will move into a more real-life demo with Jitterbit here. So, go back to the presentation. And I'll hand it over to Ilya.
Thank you. So again, you just witnessed actually 2 demos in one. You witnessed platform events for those that haven't attended 2 of the sessions yesterday. There is a booth dedicated to this, so visit that. And CDC, change data capture, is built on top of the platform events, so you get actual very real, I believe, very real results out of platform events. We're interested to see customers try other things as well. But to me, personally, change data capture has been a very big differentiator for this technology. So there's lots of things that you can do in Salesforce, many different ways, as Jay pointed out earlier. But change data capture, I don't believe that you could do exactly that any other way. And it can be used for lots of things, whether it's replication or even audit control. It's really, really powerful. So here we have ourselves, Jitterbit, and Keysight. Would like to talk to you about our path and do a quick real-life demo as well. So my name is Ilya. I'm a chief architect for Jitterbit, and with me is Ankur. He's the IT architect for Keysight. And we've been working together for a very, very long time, and along with Salesforce. I think Keysight at this point is using most of the tech that Salesforce has, but let's see how far we can take this in this demo. So whether it's at Keysight or any number of the other customers that we help with, usually this is what we see. This should not be a surprise to you. This is what you see every day. These are systems like Salesforce. These are systems like email. These are Excel files that people share between each other. This is your world. And we try to help. The way that Jitterbit tries to help with that is by establishing a connection between those systems, so you don't have to manage those files. You don't have to manage those emails. A lot of this stuff can be automated. A lot of it can be automated by point-to-point integration or something more than point-to-point integration, which takes us into APIs. And platform events is not quite an API. It's not a microservice API world of things, but it is actually in that realm of possibilities. It is in that slice of an industry. And so again, one of the ways that you can help your business is to connect those things to make sure that the people are working within their own domains, their own systems, as opposed to having to, well, drag around pieces of files or even pieces of paper. So it's been kind of a target for Jitterbit since about 2003 is when we were established. We were an integration platform company, or integration company, originally an open source vendor, as a matter of fact. And over time, we've evolved to much more than that, and we're now an API transformation company. So very much platform events is part of that. We've been a partner since the establishing of the partnership community in 2007. Salesforce actually became a customer of our own in 2012, and they since have invested into Jitterbit as well. So this is just a high-level glimpse for those that don't know Jitterbit. Again, it's an integration platform and an API platform. If you haven't heard about us, if you're interested, definitely talk to me afterwards or at a number of our booths. I do want to take this back to Ankur, who'll speak about his company and their history with Salesforce and with Jitterbit.
So, hi. So basically, we are Keysight. We founded in 2014. So basically, our history comes from 99. We got spun off from HP. We used to known as Agilent. And then in 2014, we spun off from Agilent, and now we are Keysight. So basically, we do the business in electronic and measurement products. So when we got away from Agilent, at that point, we were looking for anything which is like cloud. I mean, everywhere we were hearing, yeah, we have to go to cloud. Okay. So we looked out at various tools, and we found that, okay, for CRM, for sales, we need something which fulfill our need and fulfill all the needs of the business. So at that point, we started looking at the Salesforce, and at that time also we were looking at something which is a middleware platform which can give us a capability capability to go to the production in quick around time. So we were looking at like 4 to 6 weeks of time where we can go from development to production phase by phase. So we were going to agile model. At that time, we started using the Jitterbit. So last year, we acquired a company called Ixia, which was a big acquisition of $2 billion. And at that time, we started using more and more Jitterbit. So when we acquired that, at that time, we were having a challenge that everywhere we were trying to move the data from Ixia to Keysight systems and on-premises and the cloud system. So Ixia was having their own Salesforce. We were having our own Salesforce. So at that time, we were looking at a solution, something like CDC. At that time, I mean, I started talking with Ilya, and Ilya was already talking with Jay. So we started involving with Ilya, and we thought that we will be using that. So we are still working on that, and we will be going like sometime in next year with the CDCs. But at this point, we are having a lot of system where we are using Jitterbit and Salesforce to integrate. We are doing sales, we are doing service, we are doing CPQ tool using the Oracle Big Machine, and we are using the Jitterbit there. So what were the challenges? I mean, we were facing doing that. So because we were having we were having a lot of systems. We were almost having like 50 systems where we have to integrate, and Jitterbit helped us doing that integration in a very quick turnaround of time. And with the help of Salesforce upcoming features, we were able to do the integration very easy. So I would say that combination works for us. So yeah.
Thanks, Ankur. So we'll show you a pilot that we have here with Salesforce and with Keysight. This is what we think will be the future of a lot of the integration behind the scenes for Keysight as one of our first pilots. But I will share that even though Safe Harbor and all that, we have quite a few customers that have reached out, again, looking at platform events overall, and specifically the CDC, and ways that they can introduce that to their companies. A number of companies like Keysight have a footprint that some of it may need to be refactored to use that. I don't think that they will necessarily have to do that right away. There's a lot of stuff that they couldn't even approach, things that are multi-month projects that they couldn't try to attempt with the previous technology. So we want to show you what it will look like in just a second as well. I switch over. So this is the standard Jitterbit screen. All right, and I remember the password. This is the DevOps console. And I'll go into what we call the citizen integrator. Again, the idea here, much like it is with CDC, and what I love about CDC, even compared to platform events, is its use, its ease of use, its usability. A lot of the things that have been thought through already by Salesforce, you don't have to configure, you don't have to develop and code for. So in this case, this is what I want to show you. So this is a recipe connecting to change data capture topic on accounts, and it's going to update a number of systems. It's going to update a backend database. In this case, it's a on-premise Postgres. In addition, it will update a cloud application NetSuite. In addition to that, it will also notify the team out there in the field over Slack about the cases and leads that may come off of that account. We'll see if we have time for the latter piece, but we're going to go through, make sure that we have all the credentials. Again, this is not a pre-built type of integration, right? This is a recipe that is being configured on the site. I enter my credentials. This is the stuff that I did have before the demo. I want to make sure that it works. This is the database. There's Slack information as well that you would provide. As a citizen of the particular systems, you would have that information. There's some technical information about the back end if we needed to hook into the CDC listener in addition to the systems, custom listeners as well. And I'm going to go ahead and click Run Operation. What you saw in the demo that Jay delivered was a live registration event. This is what we're going to do here as well. We're going to let Jitterbit know that we want to register to this topic, and we're going to start listening from there on out. At that point, Jitterbit takes over. Should there be a disconnect, Jitterbit will actually retain the token that Jay talked about, and it will be able to tell Salesforce to go back in time and provide that information back. Maybe the agent was down, maybe your endpoint system was down, what have you. It will be able to act on it. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Salesforce, and I'm going to switch over to accounts. I'm going to create a new account. DF Demo 2017 now. I'm not going to fill out all the other fields as I want to leave some time for the questions. Now that I saved this information in real time has gone over to Jitterbit and allowed Jitterbit to update all the other systems. So this is a quick view into the Postgres on-prem database. Let's see if it came over to it. You can see that it's already here. I didn't enter all of the information, so if nothing else, you can see that didn't come over. Again, a very powerful feature. Only the things that changed or all the things that were created is what comes over. You don't get 2 pages of data coming through the events every time. And then similarly here, we're going to look up, and you can see that NetSuite already got this information as well. Little known fact, NetSuite creation of accounts does take a little bit of time. Again, what happens with platform events, and in this case specifically with CDC, is that each of these events behind the scenes with those systems are segregated, they're independent. So when a Postgres create was immediate, NetSuite might have taken a few seconds. Maybe there is some other system that takes even longer time. all those will happen in their time. They're not going to be blocking each other. So again, a very powerful side feature, if you will, that I know Keysight, amongst many of our other customers, will benefit because, again, they do have a lot of systems, and some systems are not as fast as others. Again, that's about it. That's all it took to go from scratch, not anything pre-built, hook up a number of systems, and see them go live.
Perfect.
I'll give it over to Jay for some Q&A.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I think one of the big challenges that customers have, we'll do Q&A in just a few minutes. I do have a couple more slides. One of the challenges that many customers experience is that a lot of these APIs and features that Salesforce comes out with are very powerful, but there is a break-in cost. There's an expense to building against it, to developing your own tool set that can consume the stream in this case and process it down into your systems. And that's really where our partners fit the gap very nicely. Jitterbit is a great example. They have connectors into hundreds of back-end systems, most likely all of the systems that you work with on a day-to-day basis, and they've built that connector that allows you to subscribe and then orchestrate downstream. So when you really are looking for kind of the speed to market there and the implementation time driving down, definitely encourage you to not always try to build yourself. It's very valuable often to work with one of the partners. I think what we have here is Jitterbit is available in multiple areas. We have a couple more sessions later on today, and definitely have booths down in the forest along with a couple of great kiosks. I definitely encourage you to check them out. Now for the roadmap for change data capture, we're currently in Winter 18. This is Dreamforce, if you guys weren't aware. We are in pilot with change data capture. So I'm looking for 10 to 15 orgs that are willing to partner with us to kind of be, I don't want to say guinea pigs, but help us out determining what the feature set should be, what works, what doesn't work, and help us really define where we're going to go over the next few releases. So if you are interested, I definitely encourage you to talk to your account rep, talk to me. We can definitely discuss if you fit for the current use case. We currently are supporting 20 entities, so most of the hero objects at Salesforce, with the exception of a couple tasks and events, aren't quite supported yet, along with every custom object. Those are all supported out of the box today. We have metadata enablement, so you can actually choose to start capture on your custom objects. We don't do that automatically for you. And we do support JSON format events, what we saw today in the demos. In the spring, we're looking to extend it to a beta, get more customers involved, definitely start opening it up so more people can try it. We should have support for around 25 entities in total. And then as we look longer term, summer and beyond, support for even more entities. Again, the idea being we want to eventually support everything across the Salesforce, so you'll see kind of a long tail of as we fill out all of the different entities, and we're working very hard with the entity owners to allow them to self-enable so the team doesn't become a bottleneck there. We're going to be focusing on how can we provide a really good declarative admin experience for enabling and subscribing to these channels. Topic filtering is on the deck, and then Avro format events, so really a binary payload as opposed to JSON. So something to look forward to. And last thing before we get to Q&A, along with Jitterbit, we have been working with a number of other middleware partners. I definitely encourage you to check them all out, find out which one fits your use cases best. And they all have different and wonderful demos. Dell Boomi, IBM, Workato, all great companies. Definitely check them out and see what works for you. And with that, we'll open it up to QA. For those of you that would like to participate, please jump into line here and speak on the microphone because it is an audio recording. For those of you that are leaving, I really thank you for joining us. Hopefully this has been helpful, and enjoy the rest of your Dreamforce. Thank you.
I have a question about metadata enablement. We currently use Informatica IOD, not only capture all of the data changes in real time, but also the metadata changes.
Okay.
So if we drop a field, it will actually change the Oracle database schema. So I'm just wondering, is that what you're
That's not what I meant by metadata enablement. So essentially with change data capture, when we enable it for an org today, all of the standard events will immediately start capturing. If you want to capture your custom objects, you have to enable those through metadata. Now, the support for metadata change capture is also on our list. It's something we want to support as well. Our developer team has actually been working on that for the spring release, for kind of starting to explore how we enable that metadata change capture. So you will begin to see that layer on in the future. It won't be available in this current release or the spring release, but it will start to come out so that you can just subscribe once and get all of these types of changes.
Thank you.
Yep.
I got a couple of random ones here. So number one, how does this work with formulas?
Formulas will not be delivered because technically those don't exist as
That's
data.
why I'm asking.
But there's a larger set of efforts around how do we expose our formula engine outside of Salesforce so that you can recalculate those things on your side.
Okay. Second is, so if you have an after trigger that's updating another object in the same transaction, does that show up as multiple transactions through this, or is it all in one transaction?
It depends on physically how you're doing that update, but if it is in the same transaction
It's
boundary,
all synchronously, yeah.
yeah, you'll see that one transaction ID with different sequence
With different
numbers.
sequence number, okay.
And then the last one in the formula will have the last one in the chain will have is transaction end of true.
Okay. And then you mentioned, some of the quote hero objects. Is this supported for opportunity line items?
OLI is not supported right now. We do support order and we support product too. A lot of those you're going to start seeing before we GA. Those are kind of minimum viable.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, the Schema ID, is that something that could be exposed through the metadata API as well? So we could just look at an object and have that, is it a hash of some sort? Or?
It can be. It's not today. It's something we can definitely look at. It is built on the current metadata of the object, so it should be something we theoretically could expose. Now, what you can do is in that event REST endpoint that we showed you, you can actually, if you go to the event type, it'll show you the latest schema. So you can kind of backwards build this.
I'm already pulling a lot of the metadata down, and if I could look at what I've got
and compare it, it'd
and
be a lot
compare
easier.
it, then I'd just be done.
Then you know.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Something we can look to enable. It's not out there yet, but we could pretty easily do that, I think.
Thanks.
Yep.
About limits and cost, is this going to be an add-on in the orgs, and are the limits going to count against like platform event rates and stuff like that, or is this a separate pile of limits?
Sure. So we haven't started really the pricing and packaging discussions. It will be an add-on feature. I can tell you that much. How it's priced, I don't know. The way we're looking at licensing right now is not on a volumetric limit of changes, but rather on how many objects you can subscribe to. So it would be potentially you could buy 10 objects, you could select which 10 you want to subscribe to, and then if you wanted to subscribe to more, you could buy additional entities. That's kind of the way we're mentally thinking about it, but definitely interested in hearing feedback on what would work. I don't think saying you have 100,000 events a day is the right way for change data capture.
So that was my concern about platform events too. And do you expect that the rolling period is going to be 24 hours, that kind of thing, or is it going to be that you're going to persist the change events back to the dawn creation?
For change data capture, we will most likely be GAing with a longer window. 72 hours is what we're looking at right now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, I observe you did synchronize for the update. And I think if you want to synchronize for the insert, should be okay. So we have been using the Jitterbit for a while. Yeah. But my question is, how about deletion? Or if we merge two records together, so how
does
it's going to be
surface?
affect to our external database?
Yeah, so deletions will show up as well. If you do a record delete, when we look at the...
Yeah, could you show?
I can try and show it. Hopefully it's still up and running. But essentially, inside of the change event header, what we tell you is we tell you what the operation was. So here we see that this one is an update. If I go ahead and delete a record, let's say we delete that same account that I created. Now you'll see that I got a delete event here. It tells me that this account was deleted. It tells me what ID was deleted. There's no changes to other fields because all I did was delete it. And if it cascaded deleted, if it deleted a bunch of contacts as well, those would be included as separate line items.
So where the results going to be displayed?
The result of
Deletion.
right there.
No, this is like more like a coding, right? I mean,
Yeah, so
in my
from your side point of
SQL
view,
Server, for example. Yeah.
the events are just coming in just like any other things that you act on.
Yeah.
So the way that the integration would work or synchronization would work in this case is you would say that if it's deleted, delete that record that matches the ID, or mark. Some people don't want to actually delete it. One of the reasons why they want to use change data capture is to actually have a full audit. So what they would do is they would use the ID 123 that comes in here, right? And they would go to the database, let's say it's a synchronization of the database, they would go to the record 123 and mark it as deleted D. That would be the
But
end
it's
result
not
for you.
really deleted in the external database, right?
Yeah, so
It's marked
Exactly.
like
You
a-
would have control over your destiny, right?
I see.
Salesforce just tells you this is what happened, and then you make the decision as to what you wanted to do.
yeah, so we can send you what happened. What you do with it on your database is up to you, and you
Yes.
have to. So we can actually take this out and discuss a little more. I am getting the hook.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you have other questions,
okay.
we'll be right
Thank you.
outside in just a couple minutes. Again, thank you guys so much. Hopefully you have a great Dreamforce.